We need to talk about what is happening on roll-off farms right now, because if the reports we are receiving are even half true, we are looking at the single most destructive event in the history of this family. We aren't talking about a feud at a dinner table or a disagreement over a pumpkin patch contract anymore. We are talking about heavy machinery. We are talking about bulldozers lining up to erase the physical legacy of the roll-off family. And the alleged mastermind behind this plan has a name that everyone in the comments section knows all too well. This is not a drill. Sources are buzzing with what we are calling the memorial destruction theory, and it involves a secret plan that has been in the works for months. A plan to flatten Amy Roloff's original flower garden and the iconic old western town to make way for a vanity project that could change the farm forever. This is the story of the wine empire scheme, and you need to hear the details before they try to bury this story. Welcome back to LPBW Update, where we dig deeper than the cameras go to bring you the truth behind the reality TV sheen. Before we get into the heavy machinery and the confrontation that allegedly took place, let's set the stage, because you cannot understand the gravity of this situation without understanding the geography of the war being fought on that property. For over 3 decades, Roloff Farms was defined by two things: the whimsy of the structures Matt built for the kids, and the heart that Amy put into the home and the land. The old western town isn't just a set of wooden facades. It is the backdrop of the childhoods of Jeremy, Zach, Molly, and Jacob. It is a sacred piece of television history. And Amy's garden? That was her sanctuary. That was the one place on the farm that didn't feel like a business transaction. It was soil, roots, and life. But according to new insider theories and whispered leaks coming from the production periphery, those 2 locations have been marked for death. And the reason why will make your blood boil. The theory gaining massive traction right now is that Karen has convinced Matt that the farm's nostalgic elements are, quote, dated eyesores. We are hearing that the narrative being pushed behind closed doors is that the rustic look doesn't sell high-ticket experiences anymore. You have to look at the financial moves Matt has been making lately. He is pivoting away from the wholesome family pumpkin patch vibe and moving toward high-end, exclusive agro-tourism. We're talking about the short-term rentals, the big house build, and now the pièce de résistance. Reports suggest that the ultimate goal has always been a high-profit alcohol venue on the property. We are calling it the Wine Empire scheme. The rumor is that Karen has been pushing for a dedicated, modern glass and steel tasting room, a Karen's Vineyard branding opportunity that would attract a wealthier clientele from Portland. But there is a catch. To build a facility of that size, with the parking and the septic and the patios she allegedly wants, you need prime real estate. You need the best views. And where is the best view on the farm? Right where the history stands. Let's connect the dots on why this is happening now. Matt is getting older. We know his mobility is always a factor. Maintaining old wooden structures like the western town is expensive and labor-intensive. It is easy to see how a voice in his ear, let's call it a managerial influence, could convince him that maintenance is a waste of money when you could just bulldoze it and build something new that generates passive income. But this goes beyond business. This feels personal. If you wipe out the western town and pave over Amy's garden, you are effectively exorcising the spirit of the first 30 years of the farm. You are removing the physical reminders of the previous marriage. It is a rebranding of history. It is a hostile takeover of the land's soul. Now imagine the scene. This is where the narrative becomes terrifyingly real. We have received unconfirmed accounts of an early morning operation that was meant to happen fast and quiet. The strategy was likely ask for forgiveness, not permission. If the buildings are gone before anyone raises a fuss, there is nothing left to save. Picture the sun just coming up over the Hillsborough Hills. The mist is still on the ground, and instead of the birds chirping or the sound of the mule starting up, the air is shattered by the roar of diesel engines. We aren't talking about Matt's little excavator. We are talking about commercial-grade bulldozers and grading equipment. The timeline we are piecing together suggests this was planned for a day when they thought nobody would be watching. Amy doesn't live in the big house anymore, but she still drives by. She is still part of the community, and Chris Marek, with his real estate background, knows exactly what land development looks like. The hook of this entire situation is the sheer audacity of it. Imagine driving past the home where you raised your 4 children, the land you poured your blood, sweat, and tears into, and seeing a demolition crew preparing to tear into the very earth that holds your memories. It's not just renovation, it's a violation. Let's dive deeper into the villain's plan aspect of this theory. Why a tasting room? Why wine? If you look at the trends in the Oregon area, vineyards are the new gold rush. Matt has dabbled in grapes before, but he's never gone full Napa Valley. The theory is that Karen sees this as her legacy. The big house is Matt's dream. The pumpkin patch is the family's legacy. But a vineyard? A chic, modern wine bar on the property? That would be hers. That would be the stamp of the new era. It creates a revenue stream that doesn't rely on the kids. It doesn't rely on Zach or Jeremy taking over. It is a business model that cuts the children out of the equation entirely. If you turn the farm into a commercial venue for weddings and wine tastings, you don't need a legacy to pass down. You just need a manager to run the books. This aligns perfectly with the friction we've seen regarding the farm negotiations. If the goal was never to sell to the kids, but to transform the property into a commercial empire, then everything Matt has done makes sense. And the destruction of the eyesores is the first step. The term dated eyesores is allegedly the specific language used to justify this. Think about how insulting that is. The Western town isn't an eyesore. It's a monument to a father's love for his kids during a specific era. Amy's garden wasn't an eyesore. It was a biological explosion of color and care. To label them as trash to be hauled away is a psychological tactic. It minimizes the emotional value of the past to justify the financial value of the future. We believe that Matt was likely hesitant at first. He loves his projects. He loves the things he built. But we all know how the dynamic works. If he is told that the wood is rotting, that the liability insurance is too high, that the upkeep is draining the retirement fund, he will eventually cave to the logic of the ledger. And who is holding the ledger? Who is managing the day-to-day operations and the future planning? This brings us to the morning of the incident. The narrative outline suggests a level of deception that is truly shocking. Usually, for a demolition of this magnitude, there are permits posted. There are environmental surveys. Neighbors are notified. But in this scenario, it seems the plan was to clear the land first and deal with the paperwork later. This is a classic developer tactic, and it reeks of desperation to get the project moving before the family could intervene. The machinery was staged near the tree line the night before, hidden from the main road. The crew was briefed to start at 7 a.m. sharp. The objective: flatten the grade, remove the topsoil, including the rose bushes, the perennials, the decades-old bulbs Amy planted, and crush the wooden structures of the western town into debris piles. We have to speculate on Amy's position here. Even though she sold her portion of the farm, the emotional tether is never cut. She has spoken openly about how hard it is to look over the fence and see things changing. But seeing a change is one thing, seeing a destruction is another. If she drove by that morning, or if a neighbor tipped her off, the panic would have been instant. You have to understand, that garden wasn't just flowers. It was where she went when the marriage was hard. It was where she went to find peace when the cameras were too much. It is sacred ground. And the idea that it was being targeted not for safety, not for a necessary repair, but for a Karen's Vineyard tasting room, that is the ultimate insult. It sends a message. You are gone, and we are scrubbing the final traces of you away. This connects back to the broader war for the farm. We have seen the property disputes tear the family apart. We watched the negotiations with Zach crumble. We watched the estrangement deepen. But this feels like the final nail in the coffin. If Matt and Karen proceed with this plan, there is no going back. You cannot unbulldoze a memory. You cannot uncrush history. This is why the stakes are so incredibly high, and why we believe this story is about to explode. The imagery of Karen, perhaps wearing a hard hat, perhaps just pointing from the seat of a utility vehicle, directing the destruction of Amy's work, is a villain arc that writes itself. But it's not fiction. It's the logical conclusion of years of resentment and business maneuvering. Now, look at the geography again, the wetland aspect. This is a crucial detail that many fans overlook. Roll-Off Farm sits on rich, complex Oregon soil. There are drainage issues. There are protected zones. You can't just pour concrete wherever you want, especially if you are near a natural water runoff. This is where the wine empire hits a snag. To build the kind of tasting room they allegedly want, huge patio, commercial kitchen, heavy foot traffic, you need a foundation that can support it. The garden sits on soft ground. It's lush for a reason. It's naturally irrigated. To turn that into a construction site requires massive intervention. We are talking about grading, infilling, and compacting the earth. That is what those bulldozers were there to do. They weren't just there to knock down a few walls. They were there to fundamentally alter the geology of that corner of the farm. And why the rush? Why now? The theory is that they wanted the foundation poured before the rainy season fully set in, and perhaps before the next filming cycle began. If the producers arrive and the tasting room is already under construction, it becomes a storyline about progress. If they try to do it while the cameras are rolling, it becomes a storyline about conflict. They wanted a fait accompli. They wanted to present the world with a new reality. The garden is gone,